You're listening to the Monday Night Community Show with Daniel on BRFM.
This is the Daniel Monday Night Community Show on demand through YouTube. Thank you very much for choosing to listen to us through this method. If you'd like to keep up to date with when I add new interviews, then subscribe to this channel. We're now joined this evening with our regular visitor Ian Goodwin. It's always good to have you here in the studio, Ian.
Thank you very much, Daniel, and good evening to all your listeners. And I'm delighted to be back after the Christmas vacation. I wasn't feeling too good over the vacation. It was a combination of walnuts and frankfurters one day, which lay a bit heavy on my stomach. But there you go. I've also been skiing since then. Yeah, the weather's been different, hasn't it? And more about that a bit later.
Yeah, it'd be good to cover that. But if you could give us a bit of an introduction like you normally do, that'd be good.
Yeah, well, I'll just give you a little bit of an overview about Her Majesty's Coast Guard. I know you probably listeners have heard of all this, but it's always nice to reiterate it. Her Majesty's Coast Guard is a service of the government of the United Kingdom concerned with the coordination of air and sea rescue. But that doesn't preclude the fact that we got involved recently in inland rescue, because Sheppey as a team is a fast water rescue team as well. But Her Majesty's Coast Guard is the section of a maritime and coast guard agency responsible for the initiation and coordination of all civil maritime search and rescue within the UK maritime search and rescue region. I think it's fair to say, I've probably said that before, it's the coastline across the country, 10,000 miles, and we extend 1,000 by 1,000, 1 million square nautical miles into the Atlantic. And this includes the mobilisation, organisation and tasking of adequate resources to respond to persons either in distress at sea or to persons at risk or injury or death on the cliffs or shorelines of the United Kingdom. And I'd like to emphasise the cliffs there, because I'm going to talk a little bit about that when I do my little safety overview later on. In essence, we have a chief executive of the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency, who at this moment in time is Sir Alan Massey. Operational control of the service is the responsibility of the Chief Coast Guard, and the acting Chief Coast Guard at this moment in time is a gentleman by the name of Richard Martin. If you were to ask me exactly what our role is, we really are... we really deal with a range of different emergencies, which includes typical things such as sailboarders too exhausted to reach the shore, walkers and animals who slip or fall off cliff paths, boats losing rudder control, crew stranded aboard a container ship battered by freak waves, medical emergencies, instances involving fires on oil rigs, suicide victims that are jumped off cliffs or bridges, missing adults and children around the cliffs and beach areas, broken down merchant vessels in English waters, evacuating injured persons at sea, locating missing persons and vessels at sea, fires on board vessels, groundings and collisions at sea. And I think it's fair to say that we've dealt with, Sheppey's dealt with quite a number of those particular incidents over the years. You'll never catch us catnapping. We're always on 24-hour alert.
And Ian, I noticed in that last that last section, you mentioned about the Chief Coast Guard, and I'm sure there's a change in name.
Yeah, you're dead right, Daniel. Well spotted. The Chief Coast Guard was Peter Diamond, and who gave sterling service. He was he got the CBE and the Queen's Honours List, but he was associated with the Royal Navy to start with. But he was also worked for well over 20 years for the Maritime. It wasn't actually called the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency when he started, but certainly for Her Majesty's Coast Guard, he worked in excess of 20 years. And he rose to the giddy heights of being the Chief Coast Guard. And he retired last year. And because he'd done so many jobs within the Coast Guard, they were going to give him, it was rather humorous, they were going to give him a broomstick to sort of say he'd done everything, he might as well now sweep everything up. But No, he got a very nice watch and a very good send-off by Sir Alan Massey. And he was a great guy. And he used to put himself out. He'd come anywhere in the country and go and see people off. But, yes, he's enjoying his retirement now somewhere. I don't know where, but he's enjoying it.
All right. So I was wondering if we could do a little bit about the weather I think you wanted to cover next.
The first thing I just wanted to do is a little brain teaser for you, like we always do. You're walking along the beach and you come across a piece of wreck. What do you do? Or what should you do? Okay. It might be a piece of gold bullion, but it's what you should do, not what you probably want to do. What you should do if you come across a piece of wreck, no matter how insignificant, if you're walking along the shoreline. Okay, that's the brain teaser for your guests this evening. But I would like to go on. I mean, if you haven't seen the news, you'll probably, and people must be aware, we've had a lot of rain. In fact, we've had more rain since records began, which I believe is 1757. Although it's not been the wettest time on the island last year, it certainly was one of the wettest Christmases and January we've had since 1757. And you've seen all the floods and all the gales and all the wind conditions. And really my safety advice is really to urge people not to take risks. As the Met Office has warned of strong winds and heavy rain, we are urging people to take extra care. Now, in some parts of the country, conditions on the sea and along the coast are extremely treacherous with gale-force winds. And we've had actually some people down on the south coast who've gone swimming in this weather. Who have gone swimming, okay? So there's no accounting for people's behaviour. And it's extremely, as I say, extremely treacherous with gale-force winds. Now, I was out yesterday walking along with one of my friends, and we went to walk across the marshes, and we were getting gusts of force 9, force 10, and they were knocking us sideways. But we were well away from the coast, and you can imagine what the wave conditions are like up on those coasts as they're bashing up against the hard standings. And we do send a lot of units to help people in these type of what we called avoidable incidents, particularly if you start walking your dog along those coastlines in Dawlish. You must be mad if you're walking along the coastline with some of those waves. Some of those waves were 45 foot high, tall as a house. And I know what a 45-foot wave is, because I ran away from one on a beach on the north shore of Hawaii once, one of the islands on Hawaii. And take it from me, they look pretty nasty. And if you do decide to venture out, check the prevailing weather conditions and make sure that you can handle them. And if you're taking photos of the sea, take care. A great photo is not worth risking your life for. And if in doubt, just don't go out. Now, particularly for us, some of the sections of the coast are vulnerable to cliff falls and land slips. And that's prevalent on the north side of Sheppey. And we are again advising the public to take great care when walking along the cliff paths or beaches, and to take note of any warning signs in place. And there are warning signs. And our advice is quite simple. Don't take risks, but if you do get into a difficulty or spot someone who might be in trouble, call 999 and ask for the Coast Guard. Bear that in mind. We are an emergency service. You don't want to be sitting there letting something fermenting longer than it needs to.
But also, I've had a couple of questions in for you, Ian, as well.
Yeah, the first one was from Mr. Thames, and it says, a question for Ian Goodwin. Did the tidal surge reveal any more bombs on the beach at Minster? The simple answer to that is yes, it did. But I think it might be interesting just to tell the listeners, I was going to say the viewers then, but it's really just to tell the listeners what a tidal surge is. you probably remember we had that warning about those tides coming in down the north coast and how it was lapping over just before we had all this bad weather coming in. And we did have a very high tide, and I actually got up at 2:15 in the morning just to go and someone's tapping away. We haven't got a woodpecker in here, have we?
No.
Sounds rather operatic. That's the sort of theme is too. I can hear it going on in the background. Sorry.
Yeah, you can't hear it on the mic.
No, good. I can hear it in the background, and I thought someone was trying to escape or something. But the tidal surge, basically, it's where the wind conditions also combine with the effect of the tide, and the real terminology is superposition theorem, but I'm not going to go into all of that because that's a long time when I studied all of that. But basically, the combination of wind and tide actually makes the tide look greater than it is. And so you're looking up a tide table and it might say it's 5 metres, but because the wind's coming in, it could end up with 6 metres. Now, 8 o'clock that evening, I knew that Herne Bay was already 3 metres over predicted tide. Now, 3 metres is 9 or 10 foot. That's more. So I thought, we may just get up to the floodgates on Sheppey, but it didn't. It only came up to the floodgates, and we were quite safe, and we didn't get flooded. Although Queenborough, down on the harbour, did get flooded, but no house was actually flooded. So that's what the tidal surges. As a result of that, you get large volumes of water which do churn up the sand. And we did have an incident where we had a bomb, an incendiary device, and the Royal Navy came along and disposed of it in a rather nice explosion. And that was last month, in fact. The second question from Carol Beener is, can I ask that nice Coast Guard man, of course she obviously doesn't know me, I would like to know what the Sheppey team are up to. Can I follow them on Facebook or Twitter? And the simple answer to that is no. We Sheppey follow the Coast Guard policy, which technically means that we shouldn't adopt Twitter or Facebook or social networking sites. And the reason being is you see in the media quite often people tweet something or they put something on Facebook and the world can see it and it gets transmitted and it goes viral, and some things you may say you may have to retract at a later stage. So the Sheppey team basically don't operate Facebook or tweeting Twitter. I can't even remember what it's called now, but we don't do that.
I was going to say, actually, probably the best way is what we do here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, what we do here is where we give an update every sort of 5 or 6 weeks on all the different types of activities that we've been up to. And I mean, we mustn't forget the fact that Facebook, there is Her Majesty's Coast Guard, the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency, which you can actually link on, and that is an official Facebook account. So if you want to see what's going on globally with Her Majesty's Coast Guard, by all means go into Facebook and have a look and log in and like Her Majesty's the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency.
And I think we're going to move on to the incidents you've covered since you were last on air.
We had a very quiet period, Daniel, from the last time I saw you. I spoke to you and did the other incidents, and then lo and behold, Christmas Eve, 24th of December, all the floods started, all the weather started to get worse, and we were paged. And the whole incident involved not only ourselves, but our flank stations, both Herne Bay and Medway. And in essence, what happened was, we, as in the Sheppey team, got paged about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And that incident, I finally, and with the rest of the team, we finally got back to station at about 4 o'clock in the morning, Christmas Day. So it was a 12, 13, 14, 15-hour stint for us all. And I managed to get back at 5 in the morning, back into the house. And Santa had been as well, lo and behold. And he hadn't left me any carrots or sherry, unfortunately, or mince pies. But he had left me a spaghetti bolognese, which I ate at 6 in the morning on Christmas morning because I was so hungry. But anyway, enough of that. I mean, during that period, we rescued over 76 people from a caravan park which was flooded by the River Medway, and we were actually tasked to Yalding. And I distinctly remember arriving in Yalding, and I knew some people in Yalding, and I went to see their property, and just to forewarn them, because they were friends of mine, that tonight's not going to be a very pleasant night for them. And of course, as I went across the bridge, I couldn't actually get back to the team from where I was, so I had to go round the outside and meet up with the rest of the team, because I was slightly delayed because I was still at Gravesend at the time. And as I say, just after 2 p.m, the Thames Maritime Rescue Coordinating Centre received a call from a member of the public reporting that people were cut off by the rising floodwaters of the River Medway at the Little Venice Caravan and Marine Park at Yalding in Kent. And through rising floodwaters and the onset of darkness, we and the Coast Guard rescue officers, we checked every single caravan and helped a majority of residents to leave using 4 small boats, which we found, and 3 4x4 vehicles. And once on dry land, the Salvation Army took the rescued people to a local leisure centre. I mean, I would say this, wouldn't I? But I would describe it as a very slick, well done incident by the Coast Guard Service. It wasn't particularly good conditions. Conditions deteriorated during the evening. We were very fortunate that a local church group turned up, and with welcome coffee and various items of sustenance, such as sausage rolls and things. So those were very welcoming. But it was a tough rescue, and it was also very cold as well, as you can imagine, in those floodwaters, because some of the officers were up to their neck and were actually going round from caravan to caravan, a number of which were floating, although some of the chains on them actually got disjointed and they were actually at angles. And the final emergency call came in at 1:30 Christmas morning, when we've managed to get the final residents out, which was just as well because the floodwaters were coming up quite significantly, by which time the Kent Fire and Rescue Service had arrived, and we also called in the Coast Guard rescue helicopter as well, who was also helped. So by about, as I say, 8 p.m, the floodwater was chest deep, and so we called in the helicopter, which was based at Leon Solent, to help evacuate the last people who wanted to leave the site. And as I say, the Kenton Fire Rescue Services joined. We got the helicopter to stand by at a nearby garden centre whilst our teams worked to rescue the last 21 people from the rising flood waters. And as I say, they're now listing caravans. And it was beyond what we would call our normal area of operation along our coasts and shorelines. And so we were operating under force majeure to help the residents. And fortunately, we all undergone fast water rescue training. And we undergone fast water rescue training during the summer, so we were well equipped to deal with that. And I think, as I said to us, as I remarked to the press, I said this was a challenging rescue in difficult circumstances, compounded by rising floodwater. And as I say, a number of officers had to wade their way through the cold flowing water to reach and detail every residence. We detailed every single residence in the book. Jill French, for instance, she actually, and with Kirsty Redmond, they sat down and they actually got everything detailed on that, as well as taking part in the rescue. And some people, as Nigel, the station officer, commented, some people actually refused to leave. But in the end, we got them all out. I'll come on to the others in a minute.
We're talking to Ian Goodwin from the Sheppey Coastguard, and we've had a few more...
Yeah, we had a phone call from a lady who'd... was a bit croaky. I think her name was Betty from Faversham. She'd lost her voice. She was almost right with the answer in terms of what you do if you find something, if you're walking along there and it's come from a wreck. But we've had a few more questions, and one was from a Christopher from Tenham. I remember when the Sinigorsk lost its load and the wood ended up on the beach in Margate. I was able to take the wood from the beach to rebuild my shed, but the police told me I had to give my details to them. Well, the police may have told them you'd give those details, but that's still not correct in terms of what you should have done. It says, "Evening, Ian. You mentioned about bombs on the beach. What do you actually do with them? Thank you, Marine Mudders? Marine Mudders? Unusual. Well, Marie, if you do find what you may suspect to be a bomb on the beach, the first thing to do is to get away from it. Don't do what some people have done in the past, is pick them up and put them in bags and brought them over to us and said, look what I found. We've actually had a person once that lays down, pick 2 mines up, actually put them in a bag and bring them up and said, look what I found. Yeah, well, just go and walk over there, put them down gently and come away from us. We don't want you to find any more, thank you. But in essence, what you do is you ring 999 and you call the Coast Guard if you find it along the beach. The Thames will make a decision. If it's above the high water mark, we'll call out the Royal Engineers. If it's below the high water mark, the Explosive Ordnance Department from Portsmouth, the Royal Navy will come up, and that's who we normally deal with. What we do is then we place a marker with an attached buoy to it in case the tide conditions. We'll mark off the beach. If it's a large device, we'll actually monitor it until such times. We may get the police to close the beach, which we've done in the past, and eventually what will happen is EOD will come up and make a judgment as to what it is. And normally what we do, we take a photograph. That's pinged straight down to EOD, and from that photograph they can normally identify what the particular device is, so they know what they're going to be dealing with when they come up. So ring 999 and ask for the Coast Guard. Question for Ian Goodwin: if you have to stay out all night, do you get a chance to have a sleep? Well, interesting, Mr. Page, Tim Page. In terms of that recent rescue on Christmas Eve, I took my car with me, so I had the luxury of having a cat nap in the vehicle for an hour, whilst some of my colleagues were wading around in the cold water, and which was a luxury. But I will hasten to add, I'd already been in the water that evening, so I was just drying out, and I did have a little cat nap. And clearly, when I got in and ate my spaghetti bolognese in the morning, I didn't get up till about 11 o'clock Christmas Day. Moving along to the 29th. Sunday the 29th of December, we had actually 2 incidents there. One at 9 o'clock in the morning, where we assisted Kent Police to search for a missing male vulnerable person believed to be at Minster Cliffs. The police helicopter was also tasked. The male was found at 10 o'clock at his mother's house, and he was safe and well. And then at 6 o'clock that evening, we were tasked to Kings Ferry Boat Club, to a vessel being towed back by Sheerness Inshore lifeboat. Safety advice was passed, and then we were reassigned to Herne Bay to a male stuck in the mud at Orr Creek. On arrival, the Kent Fire Service had retrieved the casualty. The male had been stuck in the mud up to his waist for an hour before he could get help, and was taken to hospital as a cautionary measure. As I've always said, people, they can get these compressional not an injury as such, but they can cause toxins to form in the body, so you really need to get people to hospital when they're doing that. And the final incident was on Wednesday the 22nd of January, and a day I shan't remember, because I will remember, sorry, because I came off my bike again. But this time I landed on my backside, and I thought I might have to go and see a proctologist, but I didn't, unfortunately. Sheppey Coastguard were tasked to the West Cliff Gardens after a 71-year-old female had slipped and injured herself The ambulance was in attendance. A couple of my colleagues, one of whom was Eamon French, they managed to get her out on a stretcher, and she was transferred to Sheppey Hospital, and she'd suffered a sprained ankle. Yeah, there was one other incident I didn't mention, which occurred on Saturday, and one of your regulars, James Crane.
Yeah.
Sorry, was I on then? Yeah. With James Crane. He and I think it was Josh Levy, Coast Guard Rescue Officer Josh Levy, and James. They were tasked to Crundle's Wharf, where there was a vessel being towed in, which had gone aground. It was a combination of tide conditions and wind conditions that had made the vessel go aground. They were towed back to the Queenborough Hard, where the casualties were made safe. We've had another one from a Mr. Cliff Arness. Is it Cliff Arness at Warden? Will there be any floods on Sheppey? Well, I wouldn't make a definitive yes, but it's what I will say. It's highly unlikely. We don't have those wind conditions because they're coming in from the Atlantic, a depression. So by the time they get to us, I wouldn't say they're spent, because we'd certainly had some good winds, but they're blowing. By the time they get to us, they're blowing away from the coast rather than towards the coast. So they're sort of westerly. They were southwesterly westerlies, so they're blowing away from the coast rather than towards us. So it's an offshore wind rather than as an inshore wind like it is down at Cornwall at this moment in time. So the answer is we will be okay. I did go out for a walk on Elmley Marshes, as one does, at 7 o'clock yesterday morning. I had a wander around down at Elmley. It is quite flooded down at Elmley. It was interesting because I watched the watched dawn rise. I also actually managed to another thing of mine where I'm a geek is I think I was pretty certain it was Saturn. I got the binoculars out and I was just able to make out the rings of Saturn. So I think that was high up in the southeast, but it was definitely flooded on the south part of the island. There was definitely a lot of water around, and it definitely had been raining, and it was very soggy. So the answer to the question. And the question was, found something on the coast? Or, walking along there? Well, you do need to report it, because in the last couple of weeks, the public are being reminded about the law when it comes to finding wreck material on our coastline. And this warning comes after a number of people have taken equipment from the French fishing boat, Le Sillon, which washed up on rocks near Porthcothan over the weekend in Wales. Falmouth Coast Guard coordinated the rescue of the 6 crewmen on board on Saturday the 1st of February after the Le Sillon was hit by huge waves in stormy conditions, knocking out power and steering. Now, the lady who's in charge of this, Alison Kentuck, she is the receiver of wreck with the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency, and I know Alison. I've met her on a number of occasions. She's a Class 1 diver. She's also got a master's degree in marine archaeology, so she really knows her stuff and everything. And she would tell you that all wreck material recovered must be reported, however small or seemingly insignificant. The type of material that must be reported includes any part of the hull, fixtures, fitting, cargo, and any fishing equipment. And if you recover an item, you have 28 days to fill out one of our report forms and submit it to us. Now, you can actually find those report forms on the mca.gov.uk website. If you just type in receiver of wreck report form on Google, that'll take you to the report. And if you don't declare it, you are breaking the law, and you could find yourself facing a fine of up to £2,500 and paying the owner twice the value of the item recovered. Now, that particular wreck of the Sillon will continue to break up due to the recent bad weather, but it's currently in an inaccessible area, and the Coast Guard are advising people not to risk their safety trying to reach or view it.
Ian, as always, thank you very much for coming along.
My pleasure, always a delight, and I'm hoping to be back here in March with my hat on for the Royal British Legion, and then back with my hat on for the Coast Guard, Her Majesty's Coast Guard, in May. So, as I say to folks, watch those cliffs. They are crumbly. We've had a lot of rain. Watch the mud on the island as well, and don't get caught out. Thank you very much, folks.
That is Ian Goodwin from the Sheppey Coastguard. Thank you very much, all of you who contacted us with questions for Ian, and of course participating in our little brain teaser as well.